negotiating. Mashes stared into the mug of recaf he had poured after they had sedated and secured Angelique. It had gone cold, motes of dust and fibers floating across the surface in small circles, but Mashes' interests had long passed warm recaf. The Emperor had returned. It was like the great sagas coming to life. The Emperor, the savior and ruler of mankind, descending from on high to smite the enemies of humanity. Many inquisitors had dreamed of such a day, when the Emperor would return, and now it was finally becoming a reality. Mashes should have been happy. Why wasn't he? My lord, Mashes looked up as Alexis approached, Nikolai more content to find a spot in the galley for himself. Drink this, it'll help more than the recaf. Tana tea, Mashes mused as the Valhallan passed the steaming bowl of liquid. No offense, Alexis, but I don't see how this is supposed to help. Drink it, perhaps something will become more apparent. Mashes gave Alexis an odd look. My grandmother always said Tana brought out your deeper thoughts and made you less confused. Wasn't your grandmother killed by Dark Eldar during the Necris Crusades? That was the other one. Mashes rolled his eyes and took the tea from Alexis, taking a sip before noticing that the usually bitter aftertaste was much stronger than he remembered. So, is it true that the Emperor's returned? Signs point towards it, Mashes said before taking another sip of tea. Inquisitor Marcos is checking with his contacts to make sure this wasn't an isolated incident, and Angelique won't stop babbling about her maraes. Mashes shook his head. I should be happy that the Emperor has returned to take his rightful place in the galaxy, but it's only seemed to bring more stressors down on my head. You sure that it isn't just normal stress from risking the wrath of dozens of Xenos races? Alexis started before catching Mashes' glare. With all due respect, my lord. No, the Tau, orcs, hell even the Tyranids I can handle. Mashes looked away for a moment. This is something different. Alexis did not seem convinced, but Mashes was the Inquisitor here, he did not need his retinue to be too convinced, only obedient. By the throne, I'm starting to sound like my mentor. Mashes' thoughts were interrupted as Marcos entered the galley. I have checked with all my contacts in the Inquisition, the Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor started. They can confirm that this was not an isolated incident. And that has the definition of 10,000 independent reports from Inquisitors of all Ordos from across the galaxy, as of the last calculation. Add in off-duty Imperial fleets, regiments, and Asteroutes chapters, the number continues to rise. Marcos massaged his head for a moment before continuing. Many just acted like your witch, speaking prophecy before collapsing from exhaustion. Some were not so lucky, several astropaths of Battle Fleet Solar suffered severe aneurysms, and the psyker delivering the Emperor's tarot disintegrated once the message was finished. Mashes frowned. So it's true, then. No other being has the power to touch that many souls with such precision. Marcos smiled, an unnerving sight for those present. The Emperor has indeed returned. Mashes' breath caught for a moment before Marcos' smile dropped and he continued. The only problem is that no one knows where he is, much less this herald he spoke of. Galactic East, right? Alexis piped up, drawing both Inquisitors' attentions. That's what Lord Mashes said. You let your henchmen know of this. Marcos started, turning back to Mashes. This is delicate information, Mashes, who knows what kind of security breaches you may have made. I have the utmost faith in the loyalty of my men, Mashes countered. And we'll need them to know what we are searching for anyway. Angelique said that the herald is in the element's bed, which is what she calls Tau-occupied space. The last thing I need is for us to go blundering through and starting a greater conflict. And this is a problem. Marcos' eyes narrowed. The savior of mankind has returned, and you are worried about some ignorant Xenos. Ignorant as they may be, the Tau would not take kindly to an imperial warship roaming their territory in search of our leader. We could spark a war and then get stranded behind enemy territory, and then we'll lose both the herald and any idea where the Emperor might return. You are an Inquisitor of the Imperium, Mashes, you are much more clever than that, are you not? Mashes paused for a moment, mulling over the task at hand. We'll need to move close to Tau space, to monitor their interstellar transmissions for anything that might be of use. Mashes started. Once we have a lead on where the herald of the Emperor is, we can trick the Xenos and pass through without incident. Trick them? Marcos repeated, clearly unconvinced. Rogue traders of less than noble character often use Tau outposts to hide from patrols. I can disguise myself as one to secure the herald, then bring him back here for transport to Terra. Marcos regarded Mashas for a moment. It's not a perfect plan, but it will be less likely to start a war with the Xenos. Your plan is, not what we could have hoped for, Marcos sighed, but it will suffice. Carry on with the plan. I will continue to search for any more information that might be of use. Of course. Mashas started before Marcos spoke again. However, once the herald is in our custody, I will be the one to question him on the location of the Emperor. This is my ship. Mashas rose to his feet. I have given you plenty of leeway in this matter, Marcos, but I still answer to the Ordo Xenos and will not allow you to just close us out of this matter. The Ordo Hereticus is more adept at dealing with matters concerning the Emperor, Mashas, Marcos countered. Allow those who know what they are doing to handle this matter, then you will be released for your normal patrols. Mashas' right hand clenched again. Marcos was treading a dangerous line, yet he had the authority to maintain his safety for some time. And if the Emperor's herald was in Tau space, arguing with the Lord Inquisitor would only prove to be counterproductive. Of course, Lord Marcos, Mashas said finally. I will make sure we are in position to locate the herald. Marcos' eyes narrowed, but he said nothing before departing. Once he was sure the Lord Inquisitor was gone, Mashas slumped back into his chair and drained the Tana in one gulp. Aftertaste be damned. Lord Marcos seems a bit aggressive, Alexis started. If you don't mind me saying, of course. He is just handling this in the way he knows best, Alexis, Mashas countered. I may not support some of his actions, but as they have not drifted towards an attack on the Ordos, I am obliged to comply with him for now. If you say so, my lord. Alexis replied, followed by a short grunt from Nikolai before the two Valhallans made to leave. With your permission, we'll keep an eye on the Lord Inquisitor until we have the herald in hand. Permission denied, Mashas said. The last thing I want is for Marcos to think we're traitors trying to impede his quest. He still defers to me now and then, so I have a chance to see what his plans are. No need for you two to get yourselves shot. If you say so. The brothers exchanged looks before departing. As they left, Mashas looked down at the empty bowl that had once contained his Tana, steepling his hands as he thought about what had transpired. The Emperor has returned and the Ordo Hereticus is acting more overbearing than usual. We'll have to tread lightly lest they decide to take full control of the situation, and all that entails. Gula, a moment. Celestia looked up from her spot on the floor to the Tau that had poked its head into her room. For the last few days since her arrival, the aliens had been making small talk and offers to try and coax more information out of her and Twilight, but to no avail. Perhaps now they decided to go for a more traditional interrogation. Of course. Celestia replied before turning to Twilight. Continue practicing with your meditation, I will help you with more complex conjurings once I am finished. Of course, Princess, Twilight nodded. Though, is there something simple, maybe? Something I can just work on as a start. This is a much more dangerous form of magic, Twilight, Celestia countered as she stood up. I would prefer if I stay nearby before you try anything. Right, Twilight gave a few more nods, blushing. But this is a whole new system of magic. All the theories, spells, abilities, you can't fault me if I'm a little excited. Of course not, Celestia chuckled. Now keep practicing. This should not take long. With that Celestia stepped outside, the Tau shutting the door behind her. Even outside her armor, she still towered over the little blue aliens. Their faces might not have shown it, but she could feel the fear radiating off them. You hold a good rapport with your student, the Tau started as it led Celestia down one of the base's halls. She is learning much, yes. Why such an interest in how I teach my students? Celestia asked. Perhaps there is something we can do to help, the alien offered. The data banks we have collected are vast and cover a variety of subjects. If you are willing to stay within the Empire, perhaps you could benefit from them. Celestia looked at the Tau. It would be easy to pop the alien's head with a thought, for suggesting that she would be so willing to abandon her people for some grain of knowledge. But a different thought came to mind, and instead Celestia threw back her head and laughed. "Your offers are getting more desperate by the day," she said through her chuckles. "And what do you know about my work? I follow your research and I would just plunge a few of your sept worlds into the warp before you realized what had gone wrong." The Tao worked his jaw for a moment, either baffled at Celestia's sudden mirth or trying to come up with some justification that the Tao's delving into the immaterium was not just the workings of blind men. Perhaps they weren't, but all were blind in the light of the Empress. They continued on, the Tao making no further offers as they approached a larger room on the eastern side of the base. It was white and circular, like most rooms the Tao constructed, but it was roomy enough that Celestia did not feel too constrained. The first Tao left her in the room, mumbling something in their language as it disappeared from sight. Alone, Celestia reached out with her powers, scanning both the base and the planet for any signs of significance. The blank spots left by the Tao were noticeable, though there was a further shadow she was growing concerned about. The Tyranids might not have been on the planet in force, but they were growing in strength by the day. In a few weeks they could draw more focus from their hive fleet, and then they would be in such numbers that the Tao could not repulse them. And from what she could tell, there were still no signs of Imperial vessels searching for her. "I thought I alerted enough psychers to my presence. I suppose I will have to be more direct." Gula. Celestia recalled her powers as more Tao entered the room. The leader was dressed in fine robes, similar to the one she wore now, and was flanked on either side by armed warriors. "A diplomat, I see," she thought as the Tao drew up in front of her. "I take it you have been treated well during your stay." "As well as possible, given the circumstances." Celestia started. "Though I would ask that you refrain from constantly questioning me, you are only delaying my work." "Of course," the Tao replied, though Celestia could tell they did not seem convinced. "Now, there are a few questions we would like to ask you concerning your mission and yourself." "I will answer what questions I deem necessary," Celestia replied. Again, the Tao did not appear to like this, but they quickly moved on. "What brought you to this world?" the alien asked. "A freak accident. I was experimenting with my student when we miscalculated and wound up here." "That is quite the miscalculation. We may be close to the border of your Imperium, but we are not that close." "You underestimate the powers that some of us humans deal with," Celestia countered. The Tao paused, a few of the guards murmuring to one another, before the leader spoke again. "These experiment you were dealing with," the Tao said. "What was it, exactly?" "If you must know, it is a prototype psychic shield to deter incursions by the daemons of chaos. The beings that you humans believe are manifest from some other dimension," the Tao interjected. "We have had some dealing with these creatures, they are of no real concern as of now." Celestia watched the Tao. The aliens were good at shielding their emotions, but not good enough. "How many did you lose?" she asked. There was a long pause before the Tao hung its head. "Almost a whole planet," the alien replied. There was another pause before the Tao spoke again. "You should be happy, no? It allowed your fellows a great victory." "With chaos, there is no such thing as victory," Celestia countered. "But we are getting sidetracked, no? Is there anything else you wish to ask me?" "Nothing that cannot be answered once you and your pupil are transferred to a more secured station." "What? You are moving us?" Celestia started, her voice low. "This planet is under threat of the Tyranids," the Tao replied. "And my superiors believe that you are too close to Imperial space for the Empire's good. Rest assured, you will be well taken care of on the next planet." Now Celestia was more than ready to destroy every alien she could find. So intent were they on keeping her here, they had gone past negotiation and went straight to force. "There are more forces at play here than you realize," thought. "I have said before that your empire has nothing to offer me," she started. "I must return to the Imperium if I am to complete my research. The Tao Empire is willing to give you whatever resources you need, though," the Tao started. "Would that be sufficient? You would have free rein to conduct your research in peace, provided that you share your findings with the Empire." "I cannot accept your offer," Celestia replied. I must return to the Imperium. It is in the best interests of the greater good. The alien started, but Celestia cut it off. The greater good that your ethereals supply you with is nothing more than honey to hide from the truth, Celestia started, her eyes narrowing. It is a system by which those in power exploit and feast on the efforts of thousands who dare not question where their share is. While you and your fellows are fed to stem the great devourer, your precious ethereals sit in comfort and spout out nonsense so that more are thrown into the slaughter. They don't care about my research, or accepting me, all they want is the power that I might lend them, so that you fools are forced down and unable to realize that your minds have been wiped of basic virtues and ambitions. Your ethereals would create a sterile, autocratic system where none of you strive to achieve anything, and I will have no stake in your folly. The Tau looked at Celestia, stunned. The guards had ceased their mumbling, some of them shifting their weapons in their hands as they waited for order. I assure you that you are confused, the Tau started. Perhaps if you accepted our offer. Allow me to provide a counter-offer, Celestia said. You will contact the nearest rogue trader and ask them to come here. My student and I will board that ship and depart this world, and you will forget that I was ever here. I cannot authorize such actions, the Tau replied. Celestia made direct eye contact with the alien, her brow furrowed. Yes, you will. Under normal circumstances, Celestia was careful to restrict what power she showed, lest she scare off or traumatize her subjects. Now, though, she allowed a portion of her power to leak through, not enough to kill the Tau but enough to show him her strength and majesty. Only her sons and the most powerful psychers could look into her eyes under such conditions, and for the aliens before her it was like a patch of grass trying to stall an inferno. I will see that the necessary arrangements are made, the Tau squeaked, quickly ripping his vision away from Celestia's. You are free to go, Gula. Thank you, she replied before recalling her powers. The Tau made no effort to follow her as she exited and worked her way down the hall back to her quarters. As she walked, she allowed herself a small sigh. One of these days I need to speak with Twilight on these stressors, she mused. She did not have much longer to think until she reached her room, gently pushing the door aside before stepping in. Is everything all right? Twilight asked, eyebrows raised in worry. Everything is fine, Twilight, Celestia replied, giving her student a reassuring smile. I have good news, I was able to negotiate our transfer back to the Imperium. Really? Twilight's eyes widened. That's great news. Then we can tell everyone about the disaster and save the galaxy, right? More or less, Celestia sat down across from Twilight. But that is a problem for the future. For now, let's continue with your lessons. Twilight nodded before adjusting her seat so she could better listen to Celestia's teachings. Also, it might be advantageous to start thinking of an alias you can use in the Imperium. An alias? Twilight asked, excitement shifting to worry. Is there something wrong with my name? It doesn't follow many conventional human naming schemes, that's all. Celestia explained. It might draw attention you would rather avoid. Oh, there was a pause before Twilight's spirits lifted. Well, I'm sure whatever name you choose will work perfectly. I admire your confidence, Twilight. Celestia gave Twilight a smile of her own. Now, to your practice.